Welcome to Property Question Time. I'm your host, Heather Kingston, a realtor with the Kate's Group. And here I have a panel of experts that answers your questions that you sent in to us. So let's talk to the panel and see who we have joining us today.
I'm Sabrina Sparkman with Coldwell Banker Realty.
I'm Kate Hogan with Keller Williams Heritage West.
And I'm Gary Pierce with Pure Funding Mortgage.
All right, we've got a lender in the house. That's great to have that perspective as well.
No pressure.
No.
All right, Sabrina, let's talk to you first about storms and how they can impact the sale of a house. So you've got a house listed, you're representing the seller, a big storm comes, it's under contract, you're supposed to close in 2 weeks. What happens?
Well, generally, all the onus falls upon the builder. He's got to find some way to get that repaired.
Or the owner.
Or the owner,
right.
Yeah. If it's a new build, it's, the builder. If it's a pre-existing, then the owner, they have to do that. So the builder generally has that built into place and he has to fix it, might push back the closing, or it depends upon how the repairs are fixed. If it's pre-existing, then it's up to the seller to try to fix it or offer a repair concession. It might affect the lender if the buyer, how the lender wants it fixed, and it might not be okay with a repair concession. But if for some reason there's no agreement as to it being fixed or it doesn't work out with the lender, oftentimes that's a reason that the deal will fall through.
Is there any protection for the buyer in that case?
The buyer is able to, in that case, to be able to get their earnest money back. And if that's not going to get lender approval and there's no concession for fixing it, it oftentimes, if there is, pushes back the closing, and the repairs have to be evaluated by the lender. But just hope that doesn't happen. I haven't seen it happen too much. I just saw it happen once with a situation with a fire up at the lake where one house burned down, and that was tragic. It had been all framed on, but not too common, thank goodness.
Gary, remember when there was the freeze of 2021 and FEMA got involved? Do you want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, so that happens across the country. FEMA will put out their disaster notices. And so if you're doing a loan in any of those jurisdictions, usually they do it by county to kind of keep it kind of standardized, right? So when we had the freeze and we were doing loans back then, we had there was another appraisal. A lot of times they will do a drive-by appraisal that just to make sure everything to the house is good. But sometimes it could be, depending on, like if it's a hurricane, for instance, like in South Texas, they're probably going to do another walkthrough inspection to make sure there's no internal damage done to the house as well. But yeah, that can make closing very interesting. So
right, because technically the house needs to be in the same condition it was on the day that you went into contract.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's lots of checks and balances to make sure the buyer's protected.
right, yeah, the lender wants to make sure that they're that the property is going to be what they said it was.
You're investing in a sound property, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, while we have you talking, let's talk about mortgage points.
Okay.
I think the lending side is very difficult for most people to comprehend, even sometimes us,
Yeah.
and we deal with it on our side a lot.
Yeah.
But when you hear mortgage points being thrown around, are we talking about origination? Are we talking about buying down? Like when you hear the words mortgage points, what does that mean to you?
So points, if you think about points this way, so let's say 7% is the rate at zero cost, okay? So no fees, no origination fees, anything like that. If you go lower, there's gonna be points assigned to that fee. So a lender may say if it's 6 3/4, for instance, it might cost you, a quarter of a point, 0.25%, to buy that rate, okay? Now, if you went the other way and you went to 7 1/4, you might get 0.25 in a lender credit towards your closing costs. So points essentially are what the cost of that rate in that point in time is worth.
And when you're talking about percentage, you're talking about that 0.25 percentage of the sales price, right?
Of the loan amount.
Of the loan amount,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yep.
So a $200,000 loan versus a $700,000 loan is a big difference on those points.
And percentage, obviously. Yep.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, perfect. And buyers can also get credits from sellers to affect that as well, right?
Sure. So you mentioned the buy downs, right? So sellers, y'all would negotiate a seller credit, right? And so we can use that for a lot of different things. We can use it for closing costs. We can use it for, in this situation, a buy down. So we would take that money and apply it towards the rate, and we would buy down, they call it a 2-to-1 buy down, and the first year you would be 2% lower. So if you were at 7, you'd be at 5 in the first year. The second year you'd be at 6, and that money would all be used to bring that rate down.
Essentially prepaying that interest.
Yeah, so it goes into an escrow account, which is cool. It's your money. So if you refinanced in a year, whatever's left over, so if you had $15,000 put towards that rate and you've used, over 6 months, let's say you used $2,000, well, you would get $13,000 reimbursed to you at the time you refinanced or sold your home. So it's your money. So it's a pretty cool option that's happening right now, especially with rising rate environment.
Kate, let's talk about price reductions. I think there's a lot of talk about, the market is stalling. It's we're going to lose value. The market's crashing. People are looking for all those indicators. Are price reductions on the market right now a good indicator of the market maybe pulling back, or how do you look at price reductions? Is it strategic for you, or what do you think?
Yeah, so I think I know as an agent, my fiduciary duty to my client is to make sure that I'm protecting their assets, right? I'm protecting their equity, their net that they walk away with. And so, like you said, are price reductions a direct indicator to what the market's doing? Well, absolutely. Because what we're also seeing, and we'll probably get into, is days on market. And so the days of houses selling in hours, if not, a couple days, are gone. We do have some of the sticker shock of, higher interest rates. And it's understanding that this is the new norm, right? So the fact that rates are where they're at, this isn't something that we're necessarily going to see gone, and we're getting creative, like Gary was talking about, the points. And so when I sit down with my clients and I have a direct understanding of what their goal is, and let's say it's a $500,000 property, $500,000, and we're looking at doing a $25,000 price reduction, because $25,000 is significant enough that it would get it into a different qualification level for a buyer. Looking at that $25,000, is it in the best interest to reduce the sales price of the home? There is such thing as overpriced listings, so sometimes they do need a hefty price reduction. However, what is the best way to use that money? If my clients are willing to do a price reduction, we talk about, well, what is it going to take for the buyer to buy down their interest rate? And so that would be something that maybe we don't have to give the $25,000 from the seller. That we could actually go forward and say, what's it going to take? Maybe it's $10,000 or $11,000, and that gets the buyer to a lesser interest rate, which makes it a win. Whereas that gets the buyer in on the property, and the seller is actually retaining more money than doing a significant price reduction like that. And so in today's market, it's all about, we are seeing several price reductions, and what that means is we're just chasing the market. And so if we're not pricing appropriately to stay ahead of where it's going, then that's why we're seeing all the reductions.
Which is a good thing, because
absolutely
the prices got crazy last year. The past 2 years, they've been crazy.
It provides so many options for buyers. Buy downs weren't a thing when I got into the business almost 8 years ago. It was just, let's slash the price.
Right.
And so now what we see is buyers actually having options.
Different ways.
Okay, Gary sits down with them. You want a lower interest rate? Here's what it's going to cost. Let's go to the seller and see what we can negotiate there, and it makes it a win-win.
That's right. So kind of tagging on to that, let's go to the next question for the group and talk about days on market. What are we seeing?
Longer.
Are things still selling really quickly in 4 days with multiple offers? Sometimes, but by and large, what are we seeing?
Well, I kind of, and what Kate was saying is that I still think a lot of realtors are getting used to what is the new price now, because we've been so used to listing oftentimes at what the sellers wanted us to list it for instead of what we recommended listing it for. So now it's what we recommend, but the sellers still feel like they're maybe, can ask more. So I think there's an adjusting going on with everybody as to what will a new market bear. But the prices are definitely stabilized or lower. I mean, houses that I'm seeing, the houses in the development I live in that were on the market a week have been on the market months now. And I don't know if that's a reflection of just overpricing or if it's just because of the interest rates or what it is. But I think that houses and land will sell if they are priced at a market value or lower. And so I've sold a couple pieces of land recently where they were priced a little bit lower than what I would consider even market value now, and they move quickly. So it's just a new norm, like Kate said, and figuring out what's the list price and how long do you want on the market, and anxious to sell it quickly, or do you want to let it sit for a while and see what happens? So
Absolutely.
adjustment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything to add? You're seeing the same thing?
Well, and it's coaching the sellers. You know,
Right.
hey, a 60, 70 day, time frame to get an offer and under contract isn't common. So.
All right. Well, thank you guys. That's all the time we have for now. Please join us right after this break.
Hi, I'm Kate Hogan with Keller Williams Heritage West. Whether you're looking for residential, land, or luxury properties, I would love to guide you on your journey to finding the ideal property for you. I like to think I make the American dream possible. So call, text, or visit my website and let's start your journey today for finding your American dream property.
Hi, I'm Gary Pierce with Pure Funding. We're proud to serve Texas and, more importantly, Parker County as your go-to residential and farm and ranch mortgage broker.
That's right. I'm Willis Richardson, and with our passion, products, and process, we'll get you to the closing table on time.
Give us a call or come by and see us. We're located right off the historic square in downtown Weatherford.
Or you can visit us first at our website at www.mypurefunding.com.
Hi, I'm Heather Kingston. Showing land on these ranches that we have out here in Parker County is one of my most favorite things to do. Come on, let's go take a ride. When choosing a buyer's agent, you have to have someone who has geographical competence and a vast knowledge of the area that you were choosing to purchase in. As a listing agent, my focus is to net the most for my sellers with the least amount of risk. That's such an important part of my job. And with a background of photography and videography, I bring everything to the table that we need to market your property to the best of our abilities.
Whether you're looking for a lakeside or hillside home, or a piece of property that is ready to build on, Possum Kingdom Lake is the place to be. As one of the most beautiful and tranquil areas in North Texas, Possum Kingdom Lake offers far more than just space and scenery. It promises a way of life that many just dream of. I'm Sabrina Sparkman, and I have lived at Possum Kingdom Lake since 2013, so I know how rewarding life here can be. I look forward to seeing you here.
Welcome back to Property Question Time. I'm your host, Heather Kingston, and joining me today we have Sabrina Sparkman, Kate Hogan, and Gary Pierce. All right, thanks guys, welcome back. Gary, let's talk about first-time home buyers. We know about there's programs for first-time home buyers. Everyone's like, I'm a first-time home buyer. What do you have for me? Right. Can somebody be a first-time home buyer more than once?
Sure. Yeah, so the first-time home buyer programs are great. So we could probably talk the whole time we have here today on just first-time home buyers, but to keep it kind of short, so you can use first-time home buyer benefits more than once, as long as you haven't had an interest in a property for 3 years. So the FHA, Fannie or Freddie will allow you to have a 3-year break in home ownership and then be able to come back and then purchase as a first-time home buyer again. So the cool thing about those products are low down payments. Obviously, you're going to be at a 3% for a conventional loan, 3% versus an FHA or a conventional 5%. So easier for folks to get into a property as a first-time home buyer. There's down payment assistance programs that are used for first-time home buyers where there's actually a grant given for the down payment, and so they essentially show up to closing with just having to cover their closing costs from the title company and that sort of thing. So yeah, there's a ton of different programs out there. Each state, each county has different things, so we always suggest get in touch with your local lender, Pure Funding, my shameless plug there for Parker County, and you can walk through what program fits you the best as a first-time home buyer.
Great, thank you. Kate, let's talk about buyer leases prior. Okay, so we have the house, it's under contract, but the seller says, oh my gosh, I can't close on this house because I owe the IRS $90,000 and I need time to work this out, and I forgot that I owe the IRS a ton of money. And the buyer's like, well, 90 days doesn't work unless I can lease the house first. Do you see this very often? What are the risks involved, and is it a good idea?
I try not to see it very often. There's lots of risks involved, and I don't think it's a great idea. There's a lot to it. I mean, essentially what you're doing is you're moving in a tenant to a property that they don't rightfully own. And so there's a lot of, they could get in there and really start, deciding if they could have remorse, or they could really, they could find things that were wrong that maybe wasn't, caught on an inspection. It happens. They could cause more damage to the property. I mean, something catastrophic could happen, and it's still under the rightful owner's insurance. And so we really, really, really try to stay away from buyer leasebacks for those reasons, just to cover some of the big things. And I mean, not to say that they don't happen. And, when they do happen, we just hope and pray. And sometimes they're a beautiful thing that works out, for the good of both parties. It's just, they're very uncommon. And there's so much liability to it. So it's something we don't encourage.
What about new builds? Do builders just say, go on in, it's empty?
Some of them do. I mean, here's the thing. So personally, I bought new construction, and there were some, like a garage door panel he wanted to replace. And I'm like, that's fine. I'll just move in and you can, and not all function this way. I appreciate and respect how he runs his business, because he didn't want anything left undone. And so to have people move in and have those open ticket items, and not to say that builders don't do that. I understand. It's just something that I encourage not to get into. Have it completed. So
it's much less complicated that way.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Sabrina, when an owner has animals on a property and that property is not adequately fenced and those animals are running all over the place, maybe attacking other people's animals or whatnot, are there laws related to how that is handled if damage is caused by those animals that are not properly fenced in?
Yes, I think there was a bill passed in Texas. I think it was House Bill 365 somewhere in September 2021 to kind of address this issue, mainly for farm animals, because cattle, if you don't have proper fencing, can get out on the highway and cause a wreck, or it can get out across someone else's wheat field and eat all their wheat or things like that.
Or a bull gets out and
bull gets out, So they had to address that, and I think you have to have signs posted on your fences, and just understand that you're going to be responsible for any damages that occur. And I think if you have 20 acres or more, you have to have a different kind of insurance, farm and ranch insurance, versus if you just have animals like that are less than 20 acres, you can still get by with a homestead kind of insurance. But those are some things to take into consideration when raising animals, and what kind of insurance you need for homeowners, and that farm and ranch kind of covers if something like that happens and you get sued. Then then you're covered if your bull or cow or something does that. But of course, dogs also, and just in general, we can get in trouble if those cause any damages. But it's just new law passed in relation to farm animals these days.
Well, great, thank you.
Yeah.
For the group, have any of you run across a first right of refusal in any of your contracts that come up? What complications can arise from it? How is that handled? Does anybody have any idea about that?
Well, the first rights of refusal, I think, need to be written into the deed, and they're written into there, and that any time a piece of property is passed on, it's up to whomever to read that to make sure there are no first rights of refusal, because it is common, and in land especially. But if they don't address that, or they don't accept it at the time that the contract is going through and closes, then I don't think there's anything they can do about it once it closes. They have a limited window of opportunity to take advantage of what they put into place as first rights of refusal. And there was a hospital, or there was something that happened, and there was a buyer that had it under contract, but found out during the contract that someone else actually had the first rights of refusal, and they were approached and they said, yes, we do want this. And so therefore the buyers just kind of lost out on that piece of property because they did their due diligence. So that's just another thing to look for. And that's why title insurance is important, and that's why reading those deeds are important, and understanding them thoroughly, because they do have hidden things. And in them.
Well, that would need to be cleared too. It's not something that's just a conversation and, oh, you don't want it, okay, we can move on. Essentially, that would be a cloud that would be on the title that would have to be cleared. And it is something that you can, you have older generations that maybe want to give the landowner next to them. So you can kind of help protect a legacy too of, land expansion and give the neighbor first right there. And then they can say no, whether it's 15 days or whatever.
It's true. Land
Say no, and
expansion,
then you can move on with the current contract, or you work the one that actually decided to take their right. So
Yeah, out by me there was a land 25 acres that was going up for sale, and the guy that was buying it was putting a motocross in, and none of the neighbors wanted it, especially one specific neighbor. So that neighbor actually wrote a first right of refusal and tried to present it saying, hey, I had the right to buy this land, and it was proven to be untrue. So having it in the deed is a really
filed of record.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
exactly.
Filing that with the county, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, sadly, that's all the time we have for today. So thank you so much to my panel of
you.
experts for joining us. Again, today we had Sabrina Sparkman
Thank you.
with Coldwell Banker Realty. We have Kate Hogan with Keller Williams Heritage West. And we have Gary Pierce with Pure Funding.
Thank you.
We need you to keep sending your questions in for our panel of experts. You can do that via our website at paxtelevision.com, or you can email those directly to us at pqt@paxtelevision.com. So thanks again from me, Heather Kingston, the host of Property Question Time, and everyone at PAX Television. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys again next time.